The martial arts gym was buzzing with the energy of youth, pride, and sweat. Every evening, the local dojo filled with fighters of all levels, from wide-eyed beginners nervously tying their white belts to seasoned black belts moving with confidence and authority. The air smelled faintly of mats that had absorbed years of training, and the thud of kicks against pads echoed like drums in a battlefield. That night, the gym was unusually crowded. A local tournament was approaching, and the fighters were pushing themselves harder than ever. Students were sparring, trainers barked corrections, and others sat along the walls, watching matches unfold. Among the black belts, Aaron Blake stood out. Tall, muscular, and brimming with arrogance, Aaron was one of the dojo's most celebrated fighters. His record in tournaments was impressive, but what he loved more than winning was showing off. He had the skill, yes, but his pride often spilled over into arrogance. Aaron loved the spotlight. He thrived when others were watching, and nothing excited him more than putting on a show at someone else's expense. That's when his gaze fell on her. At the far end of the gym, near the entrance, stood a woman in her early 30s. She wasn't wearing a GI like the rest of them. Instead, she wore simple workout clothes, gray sweatpants, a plain white t-shirt, and sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. She held a gym bag loosely in one hand and seemed unsure of where to go. Her name was Clara James. Clara was new to town. She had moved only a few weeks ago, and though she had walked past this gym several times, she had never stepped inside. That evening, after finishing her shift at the local bookstore, she had finally gathered the courage to check it out. She wasn't there to fight, not really. She wanted to learn self-defense, maybe take a few beginner classes, and build her confidence. But to Aaron, she looked like an easy target. "Hey, guys," Aaron said loudly, nudging his fellow black belts. "Check out the new recruit." Several heads turned. A ripple of laughter moved through the group. Clara noticed the eyes on her but pretended not to. She walked over to the front desk, speaking quietly with the receptionist, who explained the gym's schedule. Aaron smirked and stood, stretching his shoulders as if preparing for something important. He walked across the mat with an exaggerated swagger, his black belt swinging proudly around his waist. The chatter in the gym grew quieter as people noticed what he was about to do. "Hey there," Aaron called, his voice carrying across the space. "You knew." Clara turned, blinking at him. She nodded politely. "Yeah, just thinking about joining." Aaron grinned. "Thinking about joining, huh? Well, around here, we don't just join. We prove ourselves." Clara frowned slightly. "I'm just here to ask about classes." But Aaron wasn't listening. He was already turning to the crowd, waving his arms as if he were the host of a grand event. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we've got ourselves a newcomer. And I think she wants to see if she's got what it takes." The gym erupted in laughter, whistles, and playful jeers. Clara's cheeks burned, but she stayed still. Aaron stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough for her to hear. "Don't worry, it's just for fun. How about a little spar? Nothing serious. I'll go easy on you." Clara hesitated. She didn't like being the center of attention, and the last thing she wanted was to make a fool of herself in front of all these people. But something about Aaron's tone, mocking, smug, almost daring, made her pause. She glanced around. Dozens of eyes were on her, waiting. If she said no, she'd leave with their laughter behind her. If she said yes, well, maybe she could surprise them. She dropped her gym bag to the side and gave a small nod. "All right, just for fun." The gym exploded with cheers. Aaron's grin widened. He bowed dramatically, then motioned toward the mat. "Right this way, miss." Clara stepped onto the mat, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't a stranger to martial arts. What nobody in that room knew, not Aaron, not the trainers, not the crowd, was that Clara had once been a promising fighter. Years ago, in another city, she had trained in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and kickboxing. She had even competed, but life had pulled her in different directions. Family struggles, financial burdens, and a demanding job had forced her to step away. She hadn't fought in years. Her skills were rusty, her body less conditioned than before. But the foundation, the knowledge, the instincts, was still inside her. Aaron, of course, had no idea. To him, she was just an ordinary woman who looked completely out of place in a fighting gym. The two of them bowed, and the coach on duty, curious but amused, stepped in to referee. "All right, light spar only. Keep it controlled. Begin." Aaron circled her slowly, grinning like a predator toying with prey. "Don't worry," he said loud enough for the crowd to hear. "I'll make this quick." The spectators laughed. Clara's face remained calm. Aaron lunged forward, throwing a half-speed jab toward her shoulder, more to intimidate than to strike. Clara moved, not clumsily, not randomly, but with precise timing. She slipped to the side, her body flowing as naturally as if she'd done it 1,000 times. A few people in the crowd murmured. Aaron's grin faltered, just a little. He threw another punch, a bit faster. Again, Clara avoided it, her feet light, her eyes focused. The murmurs grew louder. Clara didn't attack yet. She was watching him, measuring him, letting him reveal his rhythm. Years of muscle memory whispered to her, guiding her movements. She could feel the crowd's surprise building. Aaron, embarrassed now, decided to up the pace. He launched a combination. Jab, cross, hook. Clara blocked the hook cleanly, her arm rising in perfect defense, then pivoted out of range before the next strike could follow. The crowd gasped. "She knows what she's doing," someone whispered. Aaron's jaw tightened. He wasn't laughing anymore. But Clara still hadn't attacked. She was saving that. Right now, she was simply letting him know, and letting everyone else see, that she wasn't helpless. Aaron came at her again, faster and harder, throwing a kick aimed toward her thigh. Clara checked it perfectly with her shin, the sharp sound of bone against bone echoing across the mat. Aaron hissed under his breath. By now, the gym had fallen almost silent, except for the sounds of their movements. The laughter was gone. The jeering had stopped. Everyone was watching with wide eyes, realizing this wasn't the joke they had expected. Clara exhaled slowly, her eyes never leaving Aaron's. For the first time since stepping onto the mat, she spoke. "You said this was just for fun," she said quietly. "So why are you trying so hard?" The words hit harder than any strike. The crowd let out a collective murmur. Aaron's pride burned. He charged again, reckless now, his black belt pride demanding he prove himself. But Clara was ready. She shifted her weight, slipped past his punch, and in one smooth, practiced motion, she swept his leg. Aaron's body hit the mat with a thud that echoed through the gym. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Clara stepped back, hands raised slightly in a gesture of calm. She didn't attack while he was down. She didn't mock him. She simply stood, composed, breathing steadily. Aaron scrambled up, his face red with embarrassment. He tried to laugh it off. "Lucky move," he said, but his voice cracked. The referee stepped forward. "That's enough." But Aaron shook his head. No, we're not done." Clara tilted her head. "Are you sure?" The crowd was silent now, every pair of eyes glued to the mat. The once arrogant black belt and the simple woman faced each other again, but the energy had shifted completely. The joke had turned into something else, something no one had expected. And as Aaron raised his fists once more, Clara settled into a stance she hadn't used in years, her eyes steady, her mind calm. The real fight was only just beginning. The gym was silent now. The buzzing laughter and mocking cheers from earlier had dissolved into an uneasy tension. No one was smirking anymore. Every eye was fixed on the mat where Aaron, the proud black belt, faced Clara, the woman he thought would crumble like paper. Aaron adjusted his belt, trying to compose himself, but the flush of embarrassment on his cheeks gave him away. He had been swept, not by luck, but by skill. And deep down, he knew it. Clara stood across from him, calm as ever. Her breathing was steady, her eyes sharp, her body balanced in a stance she hadn't used in years. She didn't look like a beginner anymore. She looked like a fighter. The referee glanced between them, uncertain. "You two want to continue?" Aaron's pride flared. He nodded quickly. "Yeah, we continue." Clara hesitated, then gave a small nod. The referee sighed, then stepped back. "All right then, begin." Aaron wasted no time. He exploded forward with a roundhouse kick aimed high at Clara's head. It was fast and powerful, the kind of strike that could rattle even experienced fighters. But Clara slipped just out of range, ducking under the arc of his leg. She pivoted smoothly, her footwork clean, her movement flowing like water. Erin landed, turned, and fired a jab-cross combination, but Clara's guard rose perfectly, blocking each strike before sliding to the side again. The crowd murmured in awe. They had come expecting a show, but not this one. Erin pressed harder, sweat beginning to form on his brow. He was fighting seriously now, not holding back, but every strike seemed to meet only air or Clara's quiet defense. Clara's eyes never wavered. She wasn't just defending, she was studying him. Every sloppy punch thrown in frustration, every kick lacking setup, every gap in his rhythm, she saw it all. Erin, however, only saw one thing, a threat to his pride. He roared, charging recklessly with a spinning back kick. Clara anticipated it, stepping aside just enough to let the kick sail past. In the same motion, she hooked her arm around his torso and used his momentum against him. In an instant, Erin was on the ground again. The thud of his body against the mat echoed through the silent gym. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few mouths fell open. No one could believe what they were seeing. The dojo's star black belt, tossed to the floor like a rookie. Erin scrambled back to his feet, but the confidence in his eyes was gone. His breathing was ragged now, his movements less sharp. Clara, on the other hand, looked composed, almost serene. "Enough, Erin," the coach finally called from the sidelines, his tone firm. This was supposed to be a light spar. But Erin shook his head violently, sweat dripping down his face. "No, I can beat her." His voice cracked, sounding less like a confident fighter and more like a desperate man clinging to pride. Clara's expression softened. "It's not about beating anyone," she said quietly. "It's about respect." The words struck like a blade. Erin lunged again, fueled by rage more than skill. He threw a wild punch, but Clara caught his arm mid-motion, twisted, and locked him in a clean armbar transition. She didn't crank it, didn't hurt him, but the position was clear. If she wanted to, she could end the fight right there. The gym froze. Erin's face burned red. He tried to pull free, but the leverage was against him. His pride told him to resist, but his body screamed the truth. He was trapped. Clara held the position for just a moment, then released him and stepped back. Erin fell to his knees, clutching his arm, gasping for breath. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in stunned disbelief. "Did you see that? She had him locked. She could have broken his arm." The whispers grew louder, mixing with gasps and nervous chuckles. Clara bowed her head slightly. "Thank you," she said softly, then stepped off the mat. She walked toward her bag, calm and quiet, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the silence that followed her was deafening. Erin remained on the mat, humiliated, unable to meet anyone's eyes. His fellow black belts avoided looking at him, their faces pale. They had laughed at Clara when she first walked in, but now, not one of them dared to. The coach finally broke the silence. He stepped onto the mat and helped Erin up, but his eyes followed Clara with something different, respect. "Clara," he called gently. She stopped, turning halfway. "You've trained before." It wasn't a question. Clara gave a small smile. "A long time ago." The coach nodded slowly, studying her. "You're welcome here anytime. In fact, I'd be honored if you'd join our advanced sessions." The crowd buzzed again, shocked. The advanced sessions were invitation only, reserved for the dojo's best fighters. Clara hesitated. She hadn't planned on stepping back into that world. She had only wanted to sign up for a few beginner classes. But the moment she stepped onto that mat, something had awakened in her, a part of herself she thought she had buried years ago. She nodded slowly. "All right, I'll think about it." The coach smiled, but the rest of the gym remained frozen. Some students looked at her with admiration, others with awe, but all with respect. Erin, however, couldn't even raise his head. That night, as Clara walked home, the cool evening breeze brushed against her skin. Her heart was lighter than it had been in years. She hadn't come to the gym to prove anything, but somehow, she had rediscovered herself. Memories of her old days flooded back, the countless hours of training, the competitions, the discipline. She remembered why she had loved martial arts in the first place. It wasn't about showing off, or humiliating others. It was about control, respect, and strength that went deeper than muscle. The whispers in the gym would spread, she knew. By tomorrow, everyone would be talking about the simple woman who silenced the black belt. But Clara didn't care about the gossip. She cared about the feeling, the spark that had been reignited. And as for Aaron, the next day, when the dojo reopened, Aaron wasn't his usual arrogant self. He kept quiet, avoided the spotlight, and trained harder than anyone else. The humiliation still burned inside him, but beneath it was something new, humility. For the first time in years, he realized he wasn't invincible. There was always someone better, stronger, wiser, even if they didn't look the part. Clara, on the other hand, returned with quiet confidence. She joined the advanced session, sparred with others, and showed that her skill wasn't a fluke. Slowly, the gym came to admire her, not just for her talent but for her grace. She never boasted, never mocked, never sought attention. She had walked into the gym as a stranger, mocked and underestimated. But she stayed as something far greater, a fighter who had silenced the entire gym without raising her voice. Final scene, climactic ending. Weeks later, during an open sparring session, Aaron approached Clara. His face was serious, but the arrogance was gone. "Clara," he said quietly. She looked up at him. "Yes." He bowed, deeply, respectfully. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady, "for teaching me what no one else could." Clara smiled faintly, returning the bow. "It wasn't me. It was the fight." The room watched in silence, the same silence that had filled the gym that first night. But this time, it wasn't the silence of shock, it was the silence of respect. And from that day on, no one ever called Clara simple again.